In 1987, a metropolitan policeman in London quit his job of 4 years in order to move closer to his wife's family. The man went by the fictitious name Philip Spencer, and that year he moved to the West Yorkshire area of Ilkley Moor with his wife and child. Later that year, on the morning of December 1st at around 7:15 a.m., Spencer went out on a walk to visit his in-laws. It was particularly dreary and overcast that morning, and Spencer would have to cross the Ilkley Moor to reach his destination. Spencer had heard tales of mysterious lights that had been seen around Ilkley Moor, so he brought along his camera just in case. He also took his compass with him to help with navigating through the early day fog. It had been a few months since Spencer started living there, so he prepared for any sudden mist or rain, which was characteristic of the area. As he traveled through the moor, Spencer decided to take a shortcut, which led him up a steep slope and past a group of trees. When he got close to the trees, he noticed a barely audible humming noise that he assumed came from an unseen aircraft above the fog. Unexpectedly, something darted past Spencer's field of vision, and he turned to check it out. At about 30 feet away, Spencer saw a small green creature that was around 4 feet tall. The creature proceeded speedily through the trees, and the bewildered Spencer shouted, "Hey!" at it, expecting to figure out its identity. In response, the little being turned towards him and waved. It was then that Spencer remembered his camera, and he swiftly took it out and photographed the creature. The creature then continued onward up a slope that led to a quarry at its summit. Spencer, on impulse, followed the peculiar being, curious to find out more about it. As he neared the end of the path, he suddenly froze in astonishment at what appeared in front of him. Spencer observed a large silver object that rose from the moor. It looked like 2 saucers conjoined at the edges with a dome top. On top of the dome, there was a little white cube with a pattern of holes carved into it. Spencer then noticed the humming sound he heard earlier was coming from the craft, and now blared loudly around him. Although an extraordinary sight, the shock of everything prevented him from capturing a photo before the object disappeared into the sky. Everything became quiet, and the fog cleared up in the area, and Spencer was left alone and disconcerted. Spencer decided against going to his in-laws' house, and instead headed towards the nearest village, Minston, a 30-minute walk away. As Spencer made his way to Minston, he realized his compass now pointed south instead of north. When Spencer reached Minston, it was lively and full of people, which surprised him since it was so early. When Spencer checked the town hall clock, it read 10 a.m., 2 hours ahead of the time on his watch. A panic overcame Spencer as he began to question his own sanity. He wondered what really occurred in Ilkley Moor, and why he had 2 hours of time unaccounted for. These questions led him to the town of Ilkley, the nearest place he would be able to process the film in his camera. After developing his film, he would realize that what he saw was real. Spencer now had photo evidence of the little green creature he ran into in the moor, and felt it was important enough to investigate. Spencer sent a letter to Jenny Randalls, a well-known UFO specialist in the United Kingdom, describing everything he had experienced. She placed him in contact with Peter Hoff, a UFO researcher. Hoff and Spencer agreed to research this incident as best as they could. Despite Hoff believing the case was too good to be true, after he met Spencer, he saw that he was not after fame and fortune and perceived him to be an honest man. Due to the fact that Spencer wanted to remain anonymous, Hoff suggested he be referred to by the pseudonym Philip Spencer. Around 6 weeks after the investigation had begun, Spencer received an unanticipated visit from 2 men claiming to be officers of the Royal Air Force Intelligence. The men were middle-aged and wore black suits, and humorously introduced themselves as Jefferson and Davis upon flashing their IDs. Although the one-named IDs were a bit weird, Spencer did not suspect any foul play, so he invited the men in and sat down with them to have a chat. The agent named Jefferson explained to Spencer that they wanted to discuss the incident at Ilkley Moor. This shocked Spencer because he had only told 4 people about his experience at the moor, and none of them had anything to do with the government. Both agents were well informed about the specific details of the Ilkley Moor case and also had numerous questions for Spencer. They stated that their main objective was to recover the picture taken at the moor. Unfortunately, Spencer reported that he had already gave the photograph to Hoff and that it was no longer in his possession. His guests became visibly upset by this news and immediately left his residence. Spencer could not figure out how the officers knew about the photograph. As far as he was concerned, his wife, Jenny Randalls, Peter Hoff, and Arthur Tomlinson, a researcher working with Hoff, were the only ones who knew about it. Hoff later contacted the Royal Air Force Intelligence and asked about Jefferson and Davis. However, he was informed that neither worked there, and no one from their institution was sent to speak with Spencer. As for the photograph of the green being was the first thing inspected throughout the process of the investigation. It was sent to a wildlife photography expert who confirmed that the creature was not of any known animal, but whether or not the figure was moving could not be deduced. They could confirm that the entity was about 4.5 feet tall. The picture was then sent to Kodak Laboratories in Hemel Hempstead. Peter Southerst analyzed the photo and concluded that it was developed from a first exposure negative and was not tampered with in any way. He believed the creature was part of the original photograph and not superimposed. This unfortunately did not give any insight into the identity of the figure or its authenticity. The photo was also sent to Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist with the United States Navy, for computer analysis. Maccabee explained that the slow film speed used to capture in low light conditions made the film too grainy to properly test. He stated, "I had great hopes that this case would prove definite. Sadly, circumstances prevented from being so," reported Maccabee. All in all, the photograph of the alien creature is still one of the only few that researchers considered legitimate. Hoff also looked into Spencer's changed compass. It was clear that the compass would need to be exposed to a strong magnetic field in order to flip north into south. However, a magnetic resonance scanner could replicate this effect. and no one could prove whether or not the change happened while in the moor, or if it was something Spencer could have done himself prior to the event. Hoff continued by testing the scene of the occurrence for radiation, but none was found. He also had Spencer see a psychologist, who judged that he was telling the truth as far as he knew. Not long after the incident, Spencer reported to Hoff that he had started having obscure, starry dreams. He also was unsure of what had happened during the 2 hours of missing time. In an attempt to reveal the truth, Hoff subjected Spencer to regressive hypnosis. Dr. Jim Singleton conducted the hypnosis at Arthur Tomlinson's home on March 16, 1988. Also in attendance was Peter Hoff and Matthew Hill, his journalist friend that operated the 3 tape recorders. During the hypnotic regression, Spencer revealed that he remembered walking through the moor, where he spotted a small green creature, but then found himself paralyzed. He began to levitate a few feet off the ground, and the green being started reeling him in like a fish caught on a hook. They both went into a cube-topped flying saucer, and the next thing Spencer knew, he was laying on a table in what seemed to be a medical room. He remembered clearly hearing a voice in his head telling him not to be afraid. The creatures, now numerous, then began medical experimentations on Spencer, all conducted through his nose. After that, took Spencer on a tour of their ship. During this, he got a better look at them. They were about 4 feet tall as well, green-skinned, with huge 3-fingered hands. They also had V-shaped feet, with 2 enormous toes, no nose, and a slit mouth. He mentioned their big eyes, but did not describe their color. As they continued on their tour, they passed a porthole, and when Spencer looked through it, he realized he was in space looking down at Earth. They then arrived in a room with a metallic ball. It was then that his camera and compass started to float away from him. UFO enthusiasts believe that this is when Spencer's compass changed. Then, the aliens brought Spencer to their media room and showed him 2 movies. The first one depicted a catastrophe that resulted in Earth's demise. The aliens explained that this would happen if humans continued to live without changing their ways. Oddly enough, Spencer refused to reveal the contents of the second movie. The aliens left a strong impression on him that the information related to it was too important to be disclosed. They then dropped him off back in the moor, and that was when Spencer took the photograph of the alien waving goodbye. To sum it all up, whether you accept the evidence or lack of evidence, no one can say for sure what really happened that day. Many experts were involved in this thorough investigation, and yet no concrete conclusion was discovered. Whatever did occur must have been awfully strange to end up leading to all the events in this story. Let me know in the comment section if you think this story is true or not, and why.